the goal for AI is to like really meaningfully improve, like how like humanity, like our GDP, right? And I think that we haven't shown this yet. And so why, right? I think the thing that we all obviously see is like software is becoming super cheap, right? Knowledge work is becoming cheap, right? And this is like, like obvious to us. But I think maybe less obvious is that like generating value is still really hard, and like building startups, as I'm sure many of you are doing here, is extremely hard. And software and knowledge work are parts of this, right? But it's like not all of it, right? And we haven't honestly earned like our valuations. We haven't earned the like, the amount of money we're putting into AI yet, I think, because there's still more value to create, right? And so why? And I think like the thing I come back to that I've really appreciated at Anthropic is like we have this value that's like we don't negotiate against ourselves, And so I remember being a CEO of a company and being like, okay, what are our priorities? Let's write down the priorities and then let's figure out how they trade off against each other. And it was very reasonable. But like, what if you were less reasonable? Like what if you ask reality to kind of show you what the trade-offs are? And I feel like what I really appreciate at Anthropic is we're like, let's just do the thing. Let's just do all of it. Force us to be shown what the trade-offs are, right? And I think with AI and Claude more than anything, I think it's like, what are the trade-offs really? It's harder to tell, right? Like, is good, fast, and cheap still a trade-off? Maybe not, right? And so I think that this like how do we free ourselves from the mental models of like, what our trade-offs are, what our ambitions are, things like that, so that we can ultimately deliver the promise, right, of AI. So this is something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm kind of like, okay, why is this so hard? I think one of the reasons is that like LLMs are just really weird and they're like a new thing, and we need to like figure this out, right? So, okay, whatever. Yeah, I think it's like, I think this is like roughly the art of like human agent interaction, and like it's a very, I think a lot of the tech companies in like the 2010s were built off human computer interaction, right? Like UIs, like UX, like incredible like patterns, and like now we have to develop this like new like technique, right? Human agent interaction. And I think like talking to LLMs is a new skill, right? It's like prompting or it's like public speaking or writing or any of these things. If you're good at it, you can derive like a ton more value than someone who's not good at it, right? And so it's something that I think will continue to be like high leverage for a very long time. And I think it's important for us to I think acknowledge that, right? Like I don't think the end goal is like you just put a sentence into Claude and it like does the thing for you. I think there's a lot of like depth here, and it's because the models are like grown, not designed, right? So we like are cultivating the data, the RL environments, the like et cetera, like all of the things that like go into pre, post, mid training. But we don't know what the end outcome will be until we get the model, right? Like it's like you don't just decide like, hey, this model is going to be 95% on Swebench. You grow it, right? And we grow with a lot of care, but they're organic things, and like we don't exactly know what they will be good at until like we really try them, right? We have some guesses, but these things emerge like in spiky ways, and so I say that like models don't get smarter in a straight line, right? They get smarter in unexpected ways. I think one of the like best examples is that like, if you were to go back to like maybe Sonnet 3.5 and you look at Cursor and you're like, okay, how does the model like solve coding? You're like, okay, obviously the context window is really, really large. It's like 100 million token context window. And then like we just fit the entire code base in and just solves it, right? Like that's how you think the model will get faster. But it didn't happen like that, right? It like got better by doing tool calling and by bash and grep. And like, how do you figure that out? I don't know, you just have to do it, right? So I think they're smarter than they think, and we're hobbling Claude is what I think a lot about. Is that like part of the reason that we haven't achieved as much growth as we could is that we like, we are hobbling Claude. So I'll give a case study here that I like. Pokemon ending in aw. There was this tweet about like this font may be too small, but basically, like, there was like an AI hate tweet going on where it was like, I can't believe ChatGPT can't answer Pokemon ending with AW. Claude could answer it, but like, let's not get into that. It's why, right? So there are over 1,000 Pokemon. Exactly 2 of them end in awe. It's Croconaw and Dreadnought. I didn't know that. I'm a big Pokemon fan, but like, most Pokemon people would not know that a priori, right? And so ChatGPT found 1. And so like, how would you solve this? Like let's say that we obviously think the models are smart enough. Why couldn't it, and how would it solve it? One idea is like, it's all in the weights. You just remember the weights. Like, like obviously it knows every Pokemon. It should just think fast enough. Or like it should just remember, or it should like think, and just think out all the words. Or it searches the web, right? And like all of these things, like it will not give you the answer, right? This is kind of empirical. Like, is there a version of like the architecture that does just remember? Maybe, but like empirically this does not happen. But the models are obviously smart enough. So what works is like you ask Claude Code, you ask any any agent with the code exec tool, right? And Claude Code will like get the list of all Pokemon and grep for ones that ended AW, right? And so this is like one line, it'll just do it. And like if you were, like if you're an average user, you just don't, you're like this, you ask, a model what the Pokemon ending in AW are, and it doesn't, and like you just stop there, right? Like you just don't have the ability, or you don't have the skill of understanding Claude well enough to be like, oh, like how do I prompt it better? How do I like give it the tools needed, right? Unhobbling it. So, but you can go further. You can generate a web app that like, searches any like combination of regex for Pokemon, right? And like there's so much more abundance than you think, or like than the problem implies. So yeah, we call this capability overhang, right? Like we call it like the idea that like what the models can do and like what we like, are utilizing them for are mismatched, right? And I think definitely like, Opus 4.8 has like incredible capability overhang to me. Like Fable, like, just I feel bad about it, right? So I think like, but why is it hard? I think like, one of the things to do is like, let's try and put ourselves in Claude's shoes, right? And so the usual framing is like, it's just a model in the harness. Like you figure out like, what the tools are and you put it in. But like, let's say you're Claude, like it's more of a complicated relationship between like the model, the harness, the world, and you, right? So yeah, it's like putting ourselves in its shoes. So let's say that you wanted to like explain how the auth module works, right? This is maybe even a good prompt that someone might put in, right? But in order to do this, like it needs to know who you are, right? Like, do you know anything about the code base? Are you technical or not? Like how technical are you? What level of depth do you want? The world, right? Like how big is this code base? This actually has a big implication, right? Like if you're doing this in like a large legacy code base, you need to spend a lot of compute. If you're doing it in a small code base, maybe you have no subagents, you just do it, right? And so this is something that Claude needs to figure out too. And then like what other context can it get, right? So can it look in Git or Slack, or like, like is there like more nuance around the auth module? Why is the user asking me this, right? And like if like your boss came up to you and you're like, hey, explain me what the auth module is, you might be like, well, for what? You know what I mean? Like how do I get more context so I can answer this question in the way you want, right? But Claude doesn't really like get the for what, and so, yeah, and of course, like the harness can help with some of this, right? Like it can do memory, it can like learn a little bit more about you, but there's still like a lot here that like Claude, like we have some work to do, and so like one example of making this prompt more explicit is like, hey, like I'm an experienced TypeScript engineer. I have zero familiarity with this module, but like it's kind of a high compute problem, so use subagents, right? So this is one way that you might get like a little bit more precise. Now, okay, let's see. I think like I kind of want to switch tracks a little bit here right now, and I want to talk about Sorry, this is one of those things where I haven't figured it exactly. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. So another thing, like unhobbling Claude, putting ourselves in Claude's shoes. What are like, how do we discover what Claude can do, right? I think one of my like, I think there's a lot of room for surprise here. And so one of the things I've been recently surprised about is video editing, right? So Claude like just edits videos that we now, like I shoot them with a video agency, and then it end to end, I don't use a video editor, I just use Claude Code, and it generates videos that look like this, right? So it's showing me, like, it's generating the UI as well. It's generated this across many different cuts, and so it's decided like which are the best cuts of the data. It's like cut out ums and things like that, right? And it's done some pretty like impressive like UI. Like it's done these overlays and things like that. And yeah, I'd say like if you were asked most people, hey, can Claude edit videos? Like, they wouldn't think it could, right? And like, how do you even like, what does the process, or if you were to ask Claude to edit a video, it probably wouldn't be able to answer you in this way, right? Because it just doesn't, know how to unhobble itself. So yeah, how does that look like, right? And how do you get to this? The high level is that it's code generation, right? And so this is like a representation of the folder I got here, and some of the previews. Yeah, I mean, like the idea I want to leave you with is like there's a bunch of clips here. Oh, maybe I have it here. Okay, yeah. There's a bunch of clips that I'm given, and this is essentially the raw material of the like video, And then what I ask Claude to do is I give it a transcript as well. This is the transcript I was working from, so it has an idea of like what I'm trying to say, and I ask it to transcribe it, right? And so it does. Let's see, it does a bunch of transcriptions. There's so much stuff here. But this is like essentially what knowledge work is increasingly becoming. It's like just a folder of code and scripts and data, that is like controlled by an agent, right? And so, yeah, roughly what it does is, and the funny thing is, I asked it to make this artifact as well to show you guys to sort of simplify the process. But yeah, it makes a bunch of transcriptions of each video. It decides then which clips to do, which map up to my transcript the best, and then starts editing them, clipping them together, and then making UI to go along with it as well. So it's generated a bunch of UI here in using React that will then compile together into like the end video, right? And it's also deciding which UI elements to make given the like Figma and design system from our team. More than that, so I did all of this, the first pass. This was the first video I did, and this was the second. And I think there's like a big difference here is like the color. So like one of the things I had no idea about is color grading, right? Color grading is, I know more about it now. But like, when you get a video, like turns out they give you in this like raw format, which is like sort of overexposed. And there's actually a lot of art in like, oh, how do you bring out the color of a video, right? And this was something where, this was a place where I realized I had a lot of unknown unknowns. And okay, let me come back now. I'm like sort of deciding how I want to like, so yeah, what does it mean to be good at agentic engineering, right? Like, I think like, how do you like sort of, how do you solve these problems? Like, how do you like, yeah, what's the skill like? And I think it comes down to a lot of like unknowns, right? And like, there are known knowns, like what do you want? There are known unknowns, what you haven't figured out yet. Unknown unknowns, things like that are obvious that you don't know yet. And sorry, unknown knowns that are things that are obvious, but you haven't, you only recognize it when you see it, and then unknown unknowns. And so in this case, this was me being like, wait, I have so many unknowns about color grading, right? This is one of those things where in order for me to be a better agentic engineer, I know a lot about how FFmpeg works, how video transcription works, how remotion works. I know all these things, and that's what let me get far enough to edit this video. But I didn't know enough about unknown unknowns, right? Or about color grading in particular was like a big unknown for me. And so the question is like, how do you fix that, right? And I think this is like a big problem overall. Like if our goal is to ship better things faster, to like, drive GDP, to make better products, we have to get really good at grounding down our unknown unknowns. And so what I did was I ended up asking Claude to tell me about color grading. And there is a version of this where like sometimes you just ask Claude and then you like sort of glaze over the report. This happens a lot. I think it's kind of like education porn sort of. You're like, oh, like yeah, this is, it looks cool. But I generated this, and I honestly had no idea really what color grading was from this. I couldn't prompt it better. I couldn't like figure out better. But I really tried to stick through it. So I asked it to like sort of create more visualizations. I kept asking it questions like, oh, like, hey, why, like what do these different things do? Like, what is a vector scope? Like, giving me like some sort of like, it pulled literature elsewhere from, from color grading and put it in here. And then finally, it showed me a bunch of examples of like, okay, this is your old version, this is a new version. Ultimately, color grading is kind of like a shader. It's like, you take in a pixel, you output a different pixel color. And this is like a good mental model for me to build. I knew what a shader was. And the thing that really got me here was like I was able to build a visualization where I could go over every pixel and see how the value would change over time. And so like I think through this like visualization, I was able to figure out, okay, what does color grading do? And then I could ultimately tell Claude like, hey, I want something like this. And like the insight I got here is that you want to grade your skin differently than the background, because humans have a lower dynamic range for a skin color. Like it'll look weird if you're like kind of purple, but the background can be kind of purple. You know what I mean? Yeah. And in this particular case, my skin color and the background were very close together. And so there was like some more interesting work for Claude to do. But like I was able to like express this problem and sort of figure out like, okay, what is wrong with it? Like what could be better, and then like fix it, right? Through this like process of like grounding down my unknown unknowns. And I think that like there is so much work to do in that case, right? And I think like some of what we, I think we sometimes oversimplify agentic engineering where we're like, it's just prompts, it's just loops or whatever. And I think it's more like, no, we need to know what we're doing. We need to like learn more and then like be better at prompting and make sure we're creating like, valuable work, right? And in this case, this video would not have happened if I hadn't been able to, to edit it myself. It would have, like we actually couldn't pay someone to edit it fast enough. Like we just couldn't. So yeah, there are some techniques on like how to stay in the loop. These are like, I'm writing more on this, like I think exploring with Claude and brainstorming, asking them to interview, like we talked about in the last talk, building technical plans, implementation notes, explainers. I'm not sure I don't think I want to go one by one over these things. I think it's just more like the high level idea of like, you probably have a lot of unknown unknowns, right? And you're probably not being ambitious enough, kind of as a result almost. And like, how do you sort of free ourselves of this so that we can now like unhobble Claude to do more useful work? So yeah, that's my talk. Yeah.
The question here.
Yeah.
Claude Tag.
Yes.
How much of your workflow has shifted over to Claude Tag?
Quite a lot, but I think like I still do a lot of like exploration with Claude Tag, for example. I like sort of do a lot of thinking through it, so I might ask it to generate like an artifact or something and view it on my phone. But most of the like in the loop coding still happens with Claude Code, it's more like, Claude Tag is great at getting work started. It's great at managing jobs and things like that. Great at being multiplayer, yeah.
Is Claude Tag still single player mode within the organization, or is it multiplayer now?
Oh no, it's multiplayer by default. For everyone is.
By default, but has it been adopted as multiplayer, like organizationally?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. We have it in feedback channels and things like that. People do it together. Yeah. Yeah.
Could I get to know a little bit more about your process for like empathizing with the model and then
Yeah.
designing the environment around it? Because it's not like pure in a human sense. Like
Yeah.
if you're leveraging pure reasoning, then you want like more composability or like, you know, some level of common denominator across every tool rather than like adding on more and more. So is there any other like intuitions that you kind of learned through like
Yeah.
iterating with different tools?
Yeah, I am trying to figure out. Yeah, I think there's like I overall think this is an art kind of right now. Like I think that one of the things. Okay, I do need to. Oh, actually, no. I skipped this part of the talk. Maybe I can actually go back to this. Yeah, some examples of how Claude gets better over time. I do need to take credit for this actually. Like, I did the interview grill me thing. Like I think Matt later made it into a skill, but I was the first one to like sort of identify that. But Ask User Question is a tool that I built in Claude Code. It helps Claude Code ask you questions. And I've used it has changed a lot over time. Where like, initially the model could just call it once, and then I tried being like, oh, can you chain it together? Can you interview me? And then it would like put like 30 or 40 questions together. Now I ask it to build HTML reports, and sort of like get much more in depth, and then select the answers from the HTML report. And so how you get through this progression, like Opus 4 could barely call the Ask User Question tool. It was like actually kind of hard. And now it's like there's so much capability overhang on top of it. Similarly with like Markdown and HTML, like this is something that I've talked about a bunch before, where originally Markdown was a way that like maybe the model kept itself on track, and then it became a way of communicating to you, and now like it can create really rich HTML reports. And this is like the model is getting smarter, but in these spiky ways, right? You need to switch formats from Markdown to HTML in order to unlock its capabilities. How do you figure that out? I don't have like a science for you. You know what I mean? Like I think that's like the maybe $1 trillion question.
So just to clarify, there's like two different ways. There's one where it's environment, where like ideally it's just like Bash or super lean, where it's like you have all these emergent properties that come out of just like more reasoning. Yeah. And then the other is like it can only work with the information it has. So that's like more signal and like having these or necessitating these tools in the first place.
Yeah, like the context and things like that. Yeah, I mean, that seems right, but I need to think on it more, kind of, if that's the right paradigm. Yeah. Yeah.
Question. So, to me, a lot of agentic work seems a little bit like the old school, unsexy waterfall like software development, right? Where you have requirements, specifications, then you have implementation, QA, all of that, right?
Yep.
So, how would you say one could go beyond that specifically for agents? Because right now it's like interview me, that's basically requirements and specifications, right?
Sure.
Like iterate, that's QA.
Sure.
So how do you think one can make it better for agents?
What's the end goal, you think? Like, is there like a problem you're seeing?
Build software, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, like I've been using it a lot for software building.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I have an idea of what I wanted to build,
Yeah.
and I iterate, via different ways.
Sure.
So, but I still have somewhat of a product in mind
Yeah.
that I want to build. So
Yeah.
I kind of follow this process, but I'm trying to figure out how to do it in a better way so that maybe, because like to your point, there's a capability overhang. Like what am
Yeah.
I missing? What am I not thinking? How should I think about interacting with agents in a more sophisticated way?
Yeah, so the problem is that the agent is not building exactly what you want, and like there's some mismatch between you and the agent. Is that
It's
right?
building what I want. It's just it takes longer than I would want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on your particular flow. Like I think like one of the things I do a lot is I build a lot of prototypes first. And so these prototypes can be really cheap. Like, you can sort of like build a mock-up in HTML so the agent doesn't need to fully implement it. And so then you can sort of get a sense of what you want. I often find that I don't know what I want when I'm building something. And there's like a iterative process of finding out what I want that can happen like quite deep in the implementation process. And that's usually what slows me down is like, I'm like 80% of the way there. I'm like, no, that's wrong. So like, how do you like get that earlier and earlier? And like what I like to do is I have this like iterative like spec, interview, prototype, see if I like the prototype, maybe even like make a prototype PR kind of along the way, then I might reset and take those learnings and start again, you know, because yeah, I want to build the most valuable thing I can, you know, yeah. Yeah, Daisy? Yes.
Do you still use plan mode?
No. Yeah, we need to do something about this. Yeah. Daisy also works on Cloud Code, so yeah. Yes.
All right, last question, Robbie.
How do you decide what to like have Claude spend, like take time to learn from Claude? I feel like my primary form of brain rot these days is like Claude explaining stuff to me, and occasionally like an hour later I'm like, oh, I need remedial matrix algebra to understand this. Like, I'll just go home. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, let's see. This is a good question. Honestly, like I don't think there's like an easy answer. I think that like, you know, like, yeah, like ultimately it's like, what is the goal that you're doing? And I do think one thing about agentic engineering is that it's so fun. Like sometimes you can just be like, just do this and it's just fun and you're not actually driving an outcome. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying like, you know, like sometimes you do want to be like, okay, what is wrong about my output? How do I get better? And probably the answer is that there are unknown unknowns you have, you know, like there's something that you're like not able to express well enough, you know, or maybe you don't know enough about the user or whatever, right? And like, how do you like answer that? And hopefully Claude can help you answer. But yeah, you know, it's, yeah, you know, Claude, you can learn about everything. You don't need to learn about everything, but there are particular things that you need to, yeah.
Cool, thank you, man.
Thanks.